Chapter 24. The French windows of Professor Slocum's study were, as ever, open. John and Jim tumbled through them, panting and wheezing. The old man sat at his desk. Before him a gallerized silver tray held 3 glasses and the inevitable whisky decanter. The professor raised his ice-blue eyes from his books as the 2 white-faced survivors blinked at him. Laying aside an ivory-handled magnifying glass, his gaze left his uninvited guests and came to rest upon the decanter. John did not require a verbal invitation. Grasping the thing by the neck, he splashed scotch into the 3 glasses. "No ape," said he. "No ape, Professor."
"No," said the sage. "No ape. Now, if you are able, contain your feelings and tell me what you have seen."
With tumblers clutched in whitened knuckles, the 2 took up fireside chairs. At Pooley's prompting, Omally recounted their tale of terror. At length, the professor raised a slim forefinger.
"This time I must telephone for the police," he said. "You have no guilty secrets to hide, and therefore nothing to fear. If people have died upon the island, then it is a matter for the civil authorities. I will telephone at once."
Pooley and Omally shared weary glances, hunched over their drinks and said no more. The professor made his call.
"Is there anything else you haven't told me?"
he asked as he replaced the receiver.
"Nothing," said Jim. "We've done nothing wrong, Professor. We've stuck to our side of the deal, as you are no doubt well aware." "I can find no fault in your behaviour, Jim."
"So what was it?" Omally demanded. "And don't give us performing monkey." Professor Slocum placed his thumbs and forefingers together and pressed the former to his brow.
"It would appear to be witchcraft, as you surmised. Those that choose to practice a dread art forever risk the consequences."
"But I understand that this particular bunch were white. White magic."
"The dividing line has a tendency to waver. Do you recall any of the words of their incantation?"
John scratched his curly head. "Adnoi," said he, "and tetra something. Gramophone, I think."
"Grammaton," said Professor Slocum. "Tetragrammaton. The 4 syllables that represent the unknowable and unpronounceable name of the Judaic god, the most powerful of all names of power. These children were, as you say, white witches."
"So what attacked them?" O'Malley's voice was scarcely to be heard. "And killed them?"
"They were attempting to raise a cone of power, of protection, if you like, but to do so one must be well versed and well protected psychically. Such is the product of years of training. These youths had not the wherewithal to protect themselves. The man that dares consult the dead expects in return to hear the truth. He that would conjure with the gods dares amply enough by any reckoning. He must seek protection."
"From what?"
"From primal forces, elementals, all evil that can be conjured but rarely contained. That which is sought is not by experience, always that which is found."
"It was the griffin," said Jim. "The Brentford griffin, they found."
"In as many words, yes, it was. Whether the griffin exists in flesh and blood reality is debatable, but in occult terms, in folk memory, in the subjective, the common consciousness, the imagination which is at the heart of all magic, then yes, it was called into objective existence. It is primal, uncontrollable."
The professor rose suddenly to his feet.
"And in all probability, it is still out there."
"Oh, misery," said Jim, burying his head in his hands.
"We must get over to the island at once,"
said Professor Slocum. "You speak for yourself." Pooley sought invisibility behind his glass. The island was ablaze with lights. Several river police launches were moored along the Brentford side, beacons flashing. Teams of constables and officers moved to and fro with torches and flares. The professor, accompanied by two most dissenting dissenters, arrived in the scholar's skiff. Here they were greeted by Inspector Horvis, who helped the old gentleman from the boat and wrung his hand.
"Professor," he said, "I alerted the force at once. I fear this is a bad business."
Professor Slocum greeted the policeman as an old friend, which didn't surprise Pooley or Omally in the least. As John secured the professor's slim craft to the branch of a tree, the old man said,
"I am a little miffed that you did not contact me upon your arrival to the borough, Sherringford."
Sherringford, thought Pooley.
"Professional pride," the detective explained. "I had, of course, the wish to renew our acquaintanceship, but under happier circumstances than those I find myself in at the present. You are here upon a case, then? The most important of my career. Such vexations as this I frankly have no need of. So what have you found?"
Professor Slocum strolled off up the beach, arm in arm with the detective, and their conversation went beyond Pooley and Omally. "I might say there was safety in numbers." John patted his pockets in search of tobacco. "But to be surrounded by such a force, the English Garda, frankly affords me anything but security." There was at least an ounce of optimism left in Jim, so he said, "Look on the bright side. The professor spoke the truth. We are guilty of no crime." John shook his head doubtfully. "I do not share your blind faith, Jim. Give us a roll-up, would you?" Jim passed Omally his tin. John rolled a fat cigarette. "I suppose we'd better follow," said he, pocketing Jim's tin. Without any great enthusiasm, the two men followed in the professor's wake, Omally humping a heavy calfskin case that the elder had packed especially for the occasion. Near the grove they halted. The plate was now floodlit and thick with the fuzz. Characters in wide coats took measurements and photographs. Constables stared blankly, shared illicit cigarettes and spoke in Neanderthal tones. Inspector Horvis led the professor to the centre of the grove.
"I can surmise to a reasonable degree of exactitude what events occurred, though there are of course certain grey areas." "Then what do you have?" "I have a dance of some sort, and by the evidence of the discarded clothing, a naked dance."
"How many?"
5. 2 men, 3 women, young and energetic. There has been an attack of some kind. There is blood, but no bodies."
"I see. Have any of your officers observed anything strange in the vicinity?"
"Such as?"
"Then no matter. What do you suppose attacked these people?"
"That is one of the grey areas, Professor. Whatever it was came down from above. There are—"
Horvis hesitated.
"There are,"
prompted the professor.
"There are other footprints, very large but not human. I am having casts made."
"I would appreciate a set, if possible. I am currently following a line of research which might lead to interesting conclusions." Horvis stroked his chin.
"If you are prepared to confide your findings, then certainly. This is all a bit out of my line." "You have my word on it. Now I would ask you a very great favour. Request that your men make haste with their operations and vacate the island as quickly as possible." "You ask the impossible, Professor." "Sherringford, I would most strongly recommend you do as I say."
Horvis stared long and hard at the ancient scholar, sufficiently long, in fact, for Professor Slocum to implant the concept of
immediate withdrawal for the sake of safety
firmly in his mind.
"We will withdraw immediately,"
said Sherringford Horvis.
"I will speak to you later this morning. An answer or two in return would be greatly appreciated." "Then so be it."
Horvis pressed his hand into that of Professor Slocum's. The handshake was unconventional, but significant. John and Jim were sharing the dregs of the hip flask and a single cigarette. They watched in no small wonder as, at the professor's request, the lads of the force withdrew from the island, mounted up their launches, and motored away into the darkness. "Such power," said John respectfully, and he wasted upon honest dealings.
I heard that, said Professor Slocum. The case, John, if you please.
Pooley peered around at the now all but deserted island. Professor, said he, I was thinking to have a go at your rosebed first thing. An immediate sojourn to my own might prove favourable.
The tide is up, Jim. You'd best stay.
But my work, late nights do not agree with me.
You are excused duties for tomorrow. John, the case.
Omally hefted the case. Where do you want it? He asked.
Here, where the fire has been.
All aboard, said John Omally.
Kindly lay out the contents.
Omally applied himself to the locks, but they would not budge.
My apologies.
The Professor made a profound movement with his fingers above the case. The catches sprang. I think, said Omally, that Jim and I had best away. Leave you to your work. The Professor did not dignify the remark with a reply. He flipped down the sides of the case, exposing a cluster of mysterious accoutrements, bottles, flasks, crystals, strange, indefinable objects. Blowing onto his fingers, he withdrew something that resembled a folded tablecloth. This he shook out before him. The thing was dark, characterized by a circle enclosing a pentagram, the whole wrought with cabalistic symbols. The Professor laid the cloth before him and stroked out its creases, mouthing certain words and phrases. He stepped into the circle, which was only of sufficient size to enclose himself alone.
Hand me the case, John. Do not cross the line of the circle.
Omally did so.
And now withdraw.
Pooley and Omally did so. At the hurry-up, they retreated to what they considered a safe distance and squatted amongst the bushes. An owl asked who, but Jim did not reply.
And now
Professor Slocum delved into the case and laid about him a strange collection of articles, a lamp which he lighted, a rock of a colour yet uncatalogued, a silver dish into which he decanted a dark liquid which solidified on the instant of contact, an emerald sphere, and certain small caskets which seemed to tremble as if containing living forms. John drew Pooley back into the darkness. Powerful magic was at work here. I can't be having with all this, whispered Jim. It is almost unfair. And now the Professor stood up in the circle and raised his arms to the 4 cardinal points. For the second time in a single night, the 2 men heard the words of power called forth.
Shaddai, Elchai, Ararita, Adonai, Tetragrammaton.
About the Professor the lamplight seemed contained. It ceased to reach beyond the boundaries of the circle. All else was lost in darkness. Omally crossed himself and began the Hail Mary. Jim crossed his fingers and said, Finitus. The ancient magician exhorted the ancient gods, those who were at one with the elements. The words flew from his mouth in rapid, well-practised succession, never faltering, each falling upon the last as part of a stream of consciousness, of understanding. It was old magic, old and tried and proven beyond the possibility of error or doubt. And the 2 men who looked on in wonderment knew that those things the Professor understood, that the world he inhabited was not their own. Many things passeth understanding, and knowledge is given only unto the few.
Omne, amen, amun.
Professor Slocum slumped into the circle, worn, wasted and silent. John and Jim rushed immediately to his assistance. John cradled the old white head and pressed his hip flask to the parched lips. Professor, he said, are you all right? Speak, speak. The old eyes opened, the lips moved. John withdrew his flask and drained away the final measure.
There is nothing more,
said Professor Slocum, his voice coming as from a great distance.
Nothing. It is gone. We are safe.